Jack Crofts, welcome to the studio. How are you?
I'm all good, thank you. Yeah.
Thanks for stopping by.
Very welcome.
And welcome back to Northampton.
Absolutely, yeah. Northampton all my life until very recently, so
Nice.
last year. So
And you jumped ship.
jumped ship to Sheffield, so yeah.
Fair enough.
But, yeah.
Fair enough. And we're sat in the bookshop today to talk about one of your books. Yeah, which is
Fantastic, yeah. So, I was going to say, this is Lost in Lisbon, a zine that I have been working on for sort of 2 or 3 years, but really sort of struggled to get going with it, sort of thing, and sort of sticking to it. Multiple different things at a certain point, and then it just landed on Lisbon, sort of thing.
So 2 or 3 years, was that 2 or 3 years of shooting, 2 or 3 years of editing, or how did the process go?
2 or 3 years of fully forming the idea of what it was going to be about. So originally, like for my job, I travel around the UK and occasionally abroad, and I was going to do a big travel book on all the interesting places that I go to on that sense, sort of thing. And then Lisbon was just going to be a very, very short little footnote sort of thing. So I've got tons of photos of me in the arse end of London, like in a dodgy hotel somewhere, and then a council estate in Slough, somewhere in Manchester, stuff like that. And then randomly there was a couple of photos from Amsterdam and a couple of photos from Lisbon. But I liked the photos from Lisbon so much that I couldn't cut them. So it was one of those things of like constantly going back and going, well, can I find something to relate them all together?
Yeah.
And then ultimately going, no, the rest is all
needless
crap.
noise.
Let's get rid of that sort of thing, and then made it fully about Lisbon itself. So it was always a travel zine as such, but only Lisbon within sort of the last sort of phase of its existence. Sort of thing.
So a lot of editing down, and sometimes there's a lot of talk with photo books about like trying to keep it simple, as like some people like to try and almost cram in like every photo they've ever taken in their life and be like, here's the book, and it kind of, there's that line, isn't there, where it starts actually detracting from what you're trying to get across and have as a finished object. And there's been a few interesting examples of that we've encountered in our time.
Well, like I say, the sort of main reason for doing it and just going, right, let's trim all the fat, was to sort of actually put something out there and actually do the sort of publishing side of things. Because photography as a whole, or media, I should say, as a whole, I enjoy pretty much every aspect of it, sort of thing. And I went to college for interactive media, in which I did CG, video, sound, all that stuff, sort of thing. It's only really been sort of video and stills that have sort of stuck with me, sort of thing, which is a little bit of a shame. But within that, there was like a whole thing on print, and I remember going in the first time and just thinking, like, it's just printing. Like, what's it going to be like, sort of thing. I'd much prefer being out and doing X, Y, Z, shooting whatever, or lighting something, or rigging something in Maya or something like that. But it's like, at the time, I remember then sort of thinking it's the biggest sort of flip to what I was expecting to what I sort of enjoyed. I'm not going to say the most, but something that really sort of made me go, oh, actually, no, there is something in this sort of thing. So, but it's literally one of those things that I just really wanted to be able to say, well, I've started something, I've finished something, I've overseen the print procedure, and I have something at the end of the day, and there's like a satisfaction that comes with that. So
and making something that's like fully formed, because also like as many photographers have the issue of just like all your work ends up on Instagram and going nowhere else, and then it's kind of like this sort of, I don't know, kind of a feeling of like there's nothing that's come from all of those photos that you love. So putting them together in one place, and there's almost like when you say about going into a room being like, oh, it's just printing, there can't be that much to it. There is like, it's deceptively simple, isn't it? Which I imagine when you say 2 or 3 years, I can understand why, because there's so many little twists and turns and things to figure out.
I was going to say, there are like, as sort of, it is a simple thing, but there are like also the other people on the other end of things. And I'm not going to say that I am those people, but I do have like a drawer full of swatches of different papers, and I'm going, oh, this photo looks better on this, and this one looks better on that sort of thing. But like you say, the simplicity of just keeping something simple and going, right, I want to start here, I want to end here, and have something physical in hand. Like you say, Instagram, you can get likes, shares, whatever, a shout out, but that's not something physical, and I suppose that's sort of more real because it is a real thing that you can
physical,
touch and
you can take it out, hold
absolutely.
it.
So.
And yeah, there's definitely, and like the word simplicity does come to mind, but like not in a boring way.
Yeah.
There's lots of little details that I noticed going through, even though maybe it's not like a really out there paper or something flashy, but that kind of that 2-3 years does show in the design and the different decisions being made. But was there ever a version that was going to be on like some crazy paper and
no, I think I kept it quite sort of simple. There were some weird layout choices,
okay,
which for this subject matter probably doesn't work. If it was more like abstract stuff, then maybe
you get away with it.
Yeah, but I was just buying zines up for a little while and looking through them, going, right, I like this thing, I can pull from here, sort of thing. I can't remember where. Like, it was basically just like more of a collage than an actual sort of layout. That's the best way of describing it. But I saw it in a book, and it was more of that sort of abstract. I think it was all like letters and numbers and signs and stuff, and someone just basically covered a page as like a collage of these different shapes. But you never know until you sort of try, as is anyway, sort of thing.
And see what works, and also like sometimes not as simple as like what works and what doesn't, isn't it? It's like what tells the story you want to tell and get across the message that you want to give, which from my understanding this is part of a series.
Yes, as soon as my first run, which were almost sold out, are done, then I've already started pre-production on the next two, but then I'll have either one on Scandinavia as a whole or Stockholm, one or the other.
Nice.
And then I've also got one on Barcelona, which is also coming along, sort of thing. It just needs, I think I need to re-edit all the photos. I'm not happy with the edit on them, sort of thing. So that one will be a little bit later on down the line. But they're just designed to be small little glimpses into essentially, to a certain degree, what are just holidays and holiday snaps, but not the typical stuff that you would see. But
not something you'd see in your like mum's holiday snaps, like slightly more refined.
Oh, thank you very much. I wasn't going to say that, but yeah. So
just to clarify, so one trip per each book, because I was curious whether this was, you said you travelled a lot for work and things, whether you'd been to Lisbon multiple times or whether it was just one trip. And
no, it was one. I think it was just over a week I was there for, and stayed in two different places. So one at one end of Lisbon, one at the other. Cool. And then, as everyone that does go to Lisbon says, you need to go to Sintra. So we went to Sintra, and there's a couple of photos from there as well. But the majority of the stuff sort of takes place in the sort of more tourist hot areas, but it isn't, like you say, your mum's picture of in front of the Eiffel Tower, sort of thing. So, yeah, for example, you've got the square here, but having these two that were stood there for like a good 8 minutes or so, and I was taking photos of other stuff, but they were still in the same spot, and I just sort of went, I was sort of quite interested about the two of them. They're not talking to one another.
They're just standing there.
They're looking in opposite directions, and they were there for, say...
They do, it's kind of funny, because like paired with the title of Lost In, now you saying that story with them looking around different directions, it pairs perfectly when you actually put your mind to it, they look lost.
Yeah.
They look like they're about to have an argument over where they were meant to end up and where they have ended up.
That's it. And that's, in a way, I suppose, if I can get a little bit pretentious for a while, because they aren't like the go-to images that people take in Lisbon, and then like just slightly off the beaten path sort of thing. That was kind of where the Lost in originally sort of came from as well. But yeah, no, I like that with the couple on the front. That's quite a good analogy. I'm going to use that going forward, I think. So, but yeah.
So in terms of shooting, is it, if you extend it into like a wider sort of practice as taking photos, are you looking for particular things, or are you just kind of shooting what you experience, or?
It's a little bit of a odd one. I sort of recently, from looking at like catalogues of images in Lightroom, Capture One, whatever sort of thing. I've sort of been on this sort of like, what am I taking photos of myself sort of thing, like, because as much as you can go, I go out and I go and take photos in different places, or I do portraiture in a certain way. I don't think until you really sort of look back and study what you've done
that you start to understand it.
And the same way that you would do to like any other photographer, you need to sort of go, right, well, here's I don't know, say Saul Light, for example. It's all slightly abstract, obscure in the scene, and you only get a glimpse of a little bit of a story sort of thing. I don't think that a lot of people sort of do that for their own work, and I've also sort of failed doing that, going, oh, that one's rubbish, isn't it? Oh, that's not very good. But I think it was late last year, I was looking through, and I tend to, I know that in the street photography world, everyone goes, oh, you're not getting close enough, you're not taking photos in front of people. But I kind of like the mystery, because you don't see what's on people's faces if you photograph them from behind.
And also when it's a project that's about the place, you don't necessarily want it to be a close-up shot of someone's face. You know, it kind of, that then it becomes too much about the person as well.
Exactly, that's it. So, but it tends to be a sort of through line for the moment, I'm going to say, is it tends to be either one person on their own, ignore this, that's a bad example, one person on their own, or three people, but one person's always separated sort of thing. And it tends to also be in front of a landscape that sort of is...
A lot of the, like, I see what you mean by that one, within the rest of the book being like a bad example, but it is a lot smaller figures as well. It almost has like a Van Ho-esque kind of thing, with like people almost being small within a larger landscape, because it's not about the people, but the people do give a scale to it and allow you to understand what you're actually looking at as well, which is interesting, and almost like a self-insert, isn't it? It's like, oh, I could be there, but unfortunately I'm in grey England, so...
Well, I was going to say, along the sort of grey miserableness, there's a photo that I really, really like at the moment. It was taken in Bridlington, which is north east. There we are. Yep. Of someone stood at the docks there, grey, miserable, horrible sort of thing. And they, like you say, they are just like a small figure in the frame, but you can see basically like the cliffs or the rocks and how vast the ocean is, and it just makes them look even smaller. In that sense, sort of thing. And that's something that, I don't know, I've seen more of in my work in regards to, say, people looking out into, like I say, a vast unknown perhaps, or like a mega landscape sort of thing.
So a sense of sort of epicness to it.
And sort of isolating, well, looks what's ahead of you, but you are just this small figure in the frame sort of thing. I'm not particularly confrontational either, so being behind pays off on that front, I think. So don't want to be asking people for their photos up close, sort of thing. But I'd say that's typically where I'm at the moment. And hopefully, touch wood, you might see a bit more of that in the other two books when they come out. So
nice. Are the other two books going to be similar, or are you looking to sort of? I know they're going to be different places, but you also talked about re-editing a bunch of the photos. Is that to make them more in line with these, or to switch it up?
It's a location thing more so than anything. So, say for example, with Lisbon, it's very sort of, or it's warm country, as is anyway. The editing is a lot warmer in this regard, and I don't know. I'm still a little bit, when looking at them under certain light, I go, "Oh, is it too warm?" sort of thing. But say Stockholm, Oslo, Gothenburg. All holidays that I had more recently, sort of thing, what make up this book. The next one coming, it's more a bit, I don't know, I'm going to say more punchy and a bit more contrasty, just because you need that to actually pull out anything from the landscape or from the architecture or whatever. So there isn't a consistent colour style. And Barcelona, I worry, is maybe a little bit too close to that. So that's why I'm going, let's try something else. Yeah. But they're both on the Iberian Peninsula, so we'll see. So.
And how do you find it? Because these are all, like you said, travel zines as such, and you live in, England. How do you find it? And I feel like it's a bit of a universal experience, even if you're not a photographer, because, everyone takes photos, but that, and I experience as well, you go away and suddenly everything's interesting and you're taking loads more photos, as when you get home, it's suddenly a lot harder to pick out interesting things. And I wonder if you've noticed that as well.
Or basically going anywhere new is, I find interesting, like, the weird and wonderful sort of thing, as well as like stunning architecture, lovely sunlight, whatever sort of thing. But in terms of, say, with something like this, obviously you have people doing zines in the UK, and it's, whilst it is grey, everybody knows what grey England, suburbia or flats look like, sort of thing. So doing something that was more like this in terms of, say, reception from people, because it is, everybody likes to go on holiday, and if you don't, then don't know what's wrong with you, sort of thing. Because of it being somewhere abroad, somewhere warm, I think that I've had more interest in it on that front from people that have been interested in either looking at it or purchasing it as well, sort of thing. But for shooting stuff, I think it's just one of those things of going, right, well, here's where I am, a quick overall sort of look, and then from there there'll be, say, smaller details, or, like I say, just the way that the light behaves so differently, sort of thing. Again, for example, even though it's still technically within the same country, going up to Edinburgh in the summer, there's something about the light up there that
just works totally differently.
I don't know, that's then what I've sort of become super hyper-fixated on, sort of thing, up on that front, or the old tenements or anything like that they've got up there, sort of thing. So, and
it's funny you should say in, like, Edinburgh, it's almost as though, like, the light works differently, even though, I mean, in theory it's, well, not in theory, it is the same sun, it's just something for whatever reason. And I have, been to a few different places, and it's just like, everything just looks really good here, and I'm not sure why, but it's obviously, like, lighting, but for whatever reason they're just blessed with it in a way that England perhaps isn't necessarily, or it gets a different light that requires a different style to kind of work around, or, like, pull out a decent image from.
It might be that we're so used to, like, we see daylight as much as it is, like, grey and miserable, it's still lit, sort of thing, and you just go, this is as is, sort of thing. And I don't know if it's just a photography thing, but like you say, it's just further up the road, sort of thing, a good 6 hours up the road, but as soon as you go up there, and because you are looking at light all the time, there's just something that goes, this is ever so slightly different, and I'm going to think and look about doing things in a slightly different way. So, and it's the same for Oslo. I think it's a little bit higher up than Edinburgh is in terms of latitude, latitude. Yeah. So I think it's a little bit higher up, but it was very similar in terms of just the brightness and the blues and stuff like that. So
yeah, it's a strange one. Do you find as well that like something I've experienced as well, you do a trip and you get loads of photos from that because obviously it's new, it's exciting, and there's also the idea that like, oh, I'm not sure when I'd be able to come get this, so you tend to shoot things you otherwise might just go, well, I don't need it, I'll come back tomorrow sort of thing. But do you also find that once you get back to home that there's suddenly like a slightly new approach to image making?
In terms of things after the fact?
Yeah, so like when you get back off holiday, I mean, you might be one of those people that, and me included, where you get slightly like depressed. It's like, oh, damn it back. But in terms of your shooting, you start picking out new things that you maybe didn't notice before.
I'm not entirely sure. I think for me, it's kind of a one and done sort of thing. I don't know. That's kind of a bad way of describing it. But yeah, I think it's you might learn something new here and there, but it won't be something that will be like influence everything else going forwards. So say, for example, with say the warmth of all the images in here, if I just start putting
the warm filter and stuff, it's not gonna
just
work. It's not a hard and fast rule.
But for future things, then maybe sort of thing. Going down to the Mediterranean, taking photos down around there, then you might go, well, I learnt from shooting in Portugal sort of thing that if I do this and this, then I can get a result that I like sort of thing. So it wouldn't be something that would affect my general everyday sort of thing, I think.
Has there ever been anywhere you've like struggled to take photos? You just got there and for whatever reason it's just like there's nothing here, like
Northampton. Yeah, but I think that's just a living here thing sort of thing. Similar to what I said about suburbia, looks like suburbia.
I think you get numb to your like immediate surroundings, don't you? Because it becomes so normal for you that it's like not exciting. It's not different for you, isn't it? You get.
That's it. And I mean, like being in the Midlands and so close to London, sort of being born here and growing up here, everything was built probably by the same three companies, and it isn't until you get to say the Peak District and above sort of thing that you start to see things a little bit differently sort of thing. But in terms of alien to me places, I think Barcelona was quite tricky. I don't know what it was, whether it was a mindset thing, but I did struggle a little bit more in Barcelona than I did in, say, Portugal or Sweden and Norway sort of thing. So, but yeah, I can't quite put my finger on for what reason that was.
It's a strange thing, and I imagine it was like, why did you feel that while you were shooting it? Or was it afterwards that you were like, but you still got a book out of it, like you're still. So you must have got something that at some point you looked back and went, "Oh no, actually, there's something here."
I think it was all in retrospect more so than everything else. Like there'd be days where I'd be like, "Okay, this is pretty cool. Like, this is a random garden growing on top of this house here, sort of thing. And we'll photograph that sort of thing." And then there'd be other days where I'd be like, I've gone and done my touristy bits in between sort of thing. I've gone to the Gaudi house, and I've been to the basilica that they've got there. I've been to all of that, just taking photos, and they're just all a bit crap. So it's just pigeons and people. So, I think it's a retrospect thing more so than anything with that I went, okay, there is good stuff here. Admittedly, there is. I think if you are not in the right mindset that you do photograph things or create things that sort of match that, because there is a lot of rubbish, just absolute, like, what was I thinking sort of thing. I haven't even got the settings right. It's just like take a photo just for the sake of taking a photo.
The warm-up shots, as it were, the sort of
just constant warm-up shots. So no, I think that was tricky, but I don't yeah, you get through it sort of thing. And like I say, it's like even when I say about with this, the Lisbon photos that were like the main ones that I really liked when it was a travel of everything zine. I went, yeah, there is something here. Oh, and there's also something here. Oh, actually, no, this one's pretty good as well, sort of thing. So I think it is there's a beauty to sort of sitting on stuff rather than just going, right, I'm going to shoot this week, I'm going to edit up until next week, and then I'll look again and publish the week after. There is definitely something about even not looking at them, sort of thing, just completely locking them away and then going, oh, I took over 2,000 shots, let's have a look. So, yeah.
The proper look at it with fresh eyes sort of thing, which, I think is important, because sometimes it's like you're carried by a kind of, oh yeah, that's a really good idea, and you do loads, and then you sit on it, and 2 weeks later and it's just like does this, even though at the time it felt like, okay, it's done, and then I've realized, like, over the time of me doing books and different projects, that waiting on it is like incredibly important, because like there's a few projects I've been like, yeah, that's done, hit print, go release it, and then you open the box when it comes and you're like, why did you why would you do that? Like, it's just horrid. So yeah, sitting on it's become more and more, because to some people who are watching, listening, might be like, man, 3 years, that's a long time. But in terms of the actual creative process, that makes a lot of sense to sit on it and let it develop naturally.
Yeah. The reason why I say it is 3 years, although it was just like the tiniest little thing, it's been a sort of constant, like on and off, but a constant sort of, well, I want to put something out, and they've been in from the beginning, sort of thing. If you really wanted to be pernickety, you could say it's only about a year and a half in terms of actually getting it all together on and off, sort of thing. But the fact that they were there from the very beginning, and it was going to be a travel zine, and it was going to be just places that I've been to because of work, sort of thing. It was one of those that, I don't know, I think it's earned the 3 years, because it has just been moved around, chopped and changed, sort of thing, so much. So
and even if it is like on and off, you're still probably thinking about it in the back of your mind, you know what I mean? And different sort of experiences then feed back into it when you come to actually sitting down and looking at it. So I think that's time still counts, even if you're not consciously like focused on it. You're doing other things, whether that's, you know, real jobs or seeing family and stuff like that. It's still kind of that stuff then informs it when you come back to it, you know?
Absolutely.
And then the other thing was, so this is self-published, which in here we're always a fan of people doing it themselves. Was that a decision, or was that just you knew how to do it, so why not do it?
Yeah, it's kind of one of them. That was basically it. I don't know. In terms of working on stuff, I'm a little bit of a loner to a certain degree. Is it a little bit sad? I don't know. But I just like to, I don't know if it's a, like, control in it, and I can just go, right, well, I can start now and I can end now, sort of thing. But no, it's, I don't know, it's multiple skills and doing multiple different things, and sort of learning for yourself, rather than, as much as I did have help within sequencing and stuff like that, it was me that was basically going, right, I've got a big wallet full of prints here that I'm going to lay down all over the place, sort of thing. It just sort of makes sense, and I don't know, in a way, it's a sort of success story of modern day that you can just go, oh, there's a printer down the road, or there's a printer online. I'm happy with these photos, and I can make just something physical at the end of the day, sort of thing. So. Yeah,
which is, like you say, a miracle of modern life, because it wasn't a thing. Even like 10 to 15 years ago, it was way more difficult to produce a book, as now anyone can do it, which sometimes isn't necessarily a good thing. But most of the time, it works out, and it's brought a lot more of sort of interesting ideas that otherwise wouldn't have seen the light of day through like sort of your traditional publishing house and things like that. Speaking of which, you did mention
I've
briefly.
teased you.
Yeah.
So this is the second book zine thing that I've published. In 2018, I had a book out, and it was out for 1 month, and I got a email.
I know.
Yeah.
I've done enough Instagram story stalking of you to. Okay.
So a certain studio that I photographed in sent me a letter saying, please don't ever say, use, or mention our name ever again in regards to anything. So, and if you don't take the book down, then we'll be coming after you, sort of thing. So that put me off for a very, very long time.
Yeah,
so,
I can imagine.
Maybe that should have been where we started, so I could say this is why it's taken so long to do stuff. I've had that like niggling away at the back of my mind for so long. But yes, that kind of scared me off for quite a while, sort of thing. As much as it's like this, for example, it's in a public place, it's fine.
Yeah,
I don't know, there's
the
something.
city of Lisbon comes after you.
Yeah. No, it's one of those things that, I don't know, you kind of have a bad experience and then...
it can impact everything, even when it's
absolutely
a different thing entirely. Yeah,
exactly. So, but putting this together and sort of releasing it at the end of it, like, it's... I'm proud of it, but it is just fun, essentially. It's a bit of a fun zine sort of thing for me, not only to make, but also for people to look at, sort of thing. It's having it actually released and people go, oh, this is great, and not having someone come chase after you is great. And it is sort of like a therapy in a way to sort of say, well, what was I worried about, sort of thing. It's all in my head. I can
push through it, and then it's breaks that barrier a little bit. And
absolutely,
you can just keep going.
So it's one of those. The photos for the other book you can view. I just can't sell or mention where they are. So yes. So if anyone's interested, you can have a look at those on my website, sort of thing. But yeah, no. With the release of this, it's start of new things to come. I think in terms of publishing, printing, and getting more stuff done.
Exciting. And then last things, just to round off, did you have any other sort of burning thoughts or anything you wanted to get off your chest? Or
I think, like, as a learning thing, it's worth everybody doing at some point. As much as, like you say, maybe not everybody should be making a book on XYZ sort of thing.
I say that jokingly,
but yeah, I think anybody that is interested in putting together like a body of work, like a series of photographs, not just a photo of your toes of the first of the roll, a picture of like a fire hydrant or whatever sort of thing. If you do have like a through line and you've got, say, 20 to 30 images, there's nothing to stop you doing it.
Putting it together.
It's only going to cost you a bit of your time and a little bit of your money, but to actually have something, if you are a creative person, having something that you've created in a physical thing that you can hold that isn't just a printout.
Yeah, it feels very special. And if you've done the legwork to make sure it makes sense, and because it's great for that thing we talked about of like going back through your kind of like catalogue of images, as it were, and kind of like picking out, like you mentioned Saul Leiter as an example, like his work's very almost consistent, but I'm sure there's a whole body of work that's never seen the light of day that's been kind of like tucked away somewhere.
I was going to say he was a fashion photographer, wasn't he? That was his job by trade, but you never see...
That's not what gets mentioned. No. It's a frosted window in New York with... Yeah, so it's... But going back through your work and trying to compile a consistent book series kind of gives you... I definitely feel like it can elevate someone's practice to the next level, and they can find things about their work that they maybe hadn't even really noticed they were doing because they were doing it subconsciously, whether it's what they're pointing the camera at or how they're picking out light. And then once you're aware of it, it becomes such a powerful thing in like developing, I guess the word would be style, or like deciding where you want to go next.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, I mean, another thing to mention as well, like you can look back and look at a collection of images, but you don't have to go, oh bloody hell, I need 407 images or however many pages to have like a big Magnum book sort of thing. That's why I think a zine is so good, because you can, well, I wouldn't do any less than 15, but you could do a very small number of images, or you could do a very large number of images and quickly be able to produce something and push something out.
Yeah, there's an immediacy to it that kind of, and even for a series that's kind of, so like halfway there, it's a good format to then get the excuse to talk to other people about what they think. You put it out and people give you feedback and you're like, oh, I've never actually thought about it in that way, which then if you do in the future want to turn it into like, you know, like a big fucking hardback Magnum style thing, then that kind of, you still have the option to do that, because you haven't like made necessarily like the be all and end all version, because it's obviously I feel like the term zines change slightly, because these are a lot nicer than your typical like folded up bit of paper, but I still think it leaves the series open to development still, and but with giving it access to a whole new audience.
Absolutely. Cool. The singles and EPs of the photographic world. That's kind of a good way of describing it.
That is a brilliant way of describing it. And
but everybody should make one, make something, keep doing, and it's not that deep. Don't overthink it, and
have fun,
get it done.
Perfect. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast and stopping by.
Thank you very much for having me.